The police officer punches me in the face. I was super excited at 15 and a half years old to get, the last 6 months over and done with to go and get my driver's license. I was begging my mother to allow me to buy my first vehicle pre-getting my license so that in my head, when I finally got my license, I would have everything. I could just hit the road and the adventures would begin. My mom was a very generous lady. She would do anything for us kids. I have a younger sister, just the two of us. And I talked my mom into buying, at the time, which was really cool, a lowrider truck. It was a 1988 Toyota standard cab pickup truck. And it had already been modified by a local guy, so it was kind of like the cool truck in town already. And it had some ground effects kit. It was lowered, had some wheels to give it a kind of a stance look, and like a custom two-tone blue paint job. And we made a deal on the truck, and I got the truck, but I couldn't drive the truck. So I have this truck sitting in my garage. It's like my dream vehicle, and I still had probably 4 months to go till I turned 16. Well, 4 months goes by. I rush into our DMV and I write the test, and I fail my very first written test to get my learner's license. So you have to wait 24 hours and come back, or whatever it was, which I do. I come back, I pay the fee again, and I barely pass my written test. So I get what's called my learner's driver's license. And with your learners, you have some restrictions because they know you're new at driving. And the basic restrictions back then, we're talking 24 years ago, was you couldn't drive a manual vehicle. Guess what the truck was? Manual. You couldn't drive at night, and you could not drive with anybody, with any other passengers, unless they were 19 years old and had a valid full driver's license. So that was the conditions. So I have this truck sitting in the garage at my mom's house. And so every single day, this vehicle is taunting me. I couldn't resist the urge to take the damn truck for a little rip all by myself on my learner's driver's license. Late in the evening, it was a manual gearbox. And I also had just installed my first modification. Again, being, 16 years old, broke, no money, having to ask mom for money, yada, yada, yada. The only thing I could afford was, at the time, neon lights. Underglow kits were really popular. And I remember buying this underglow kit for under the truck, as well as a neon license plate frame. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. And you could see, it was to get noticed. That's what you wanted, to get noticed. Like, hey, look how cool I am. I'm driving my lowrider. When you're young, you don't have enough forethought or experience to really predict the super bad outcomes, or even like remotely bad outcomes, but the insanely bad outcome that was about to happen to my unfortunate ass. I take the truck out, I flick on all the neon lights, I just think I'm the coolest kid in the world, and I only get about 6 blocks away from my house before I pass in the opposite direction a local RCMP officer, that's Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who very immediately, I noticed, hits the brakes because the brake lights come on and flips a U-turn. I thought my heart was going to jump out of my chest. I was immediately overcome with anxiety, and I was super nervous because I knew it was coming. I was driving when I shouldn't have been driving, but then I was basically breaking almost every rule of even the term. So this was going to be really bad. And in a split second, I make a bad decision. What was already a bad decision, I was on a real roll. I made what was already a really bad decision a lot worse, because instead of just calmly pulling over and just admitting defeat, I wanted to hammer the gas and outrun this police officer with all of my driving experience that I had at that time, 0. And I take off down the road, accelerate, hammer the brakes as I approach a 4-way intersection. So I slow down, but I do not stop, of course, and take an immediate right onto a road that is called 10th Avenue in the city I grew up in, Port Alberni, small mill town. And this is one of our main streets, and we call it the 10th Avenue Dip. And the reason why it's called the Dip is there's a few residential roads before there are no more residential roads. There's a big gully, and the road goes right through the middle of that gully, and it's fully barricaded off. And then on the other side of the gully, as you come up the other side, it opens back up to some more residential and side roads. But there's this one road that comes down on a bit of an angle that meets up. It's the final road on the right-hand side before you go through the big dip in the barriers. And I am just pedal to the metal as fast as I can going down this hill. So I'm going downhill and there's nobody in front of me. So I'm just like, oh, it's home free. I can't see the police officer behind me yet. I have no real plan. Things are rushing through my head a mile a minute. And all of a sudden, someone on this side road who had stopped at the stop sign looks up the road, probably briefly, or saw me, but didn't really gauge how fast I was coming down. I was doing about 100 kilometers an hour. The speed limit's 50, so I'm doing double the speed limit in the city limits. And the person pulls out in front of me. And by the time they pull out and get in front of me, I'm barreling down behind this car and I have nowhere to go. This is a 1988 Toyota pickup truck with I believe drum brakes in the back, no ABS. The car's gonna lock up, which it does. I slam on the brakes. The truck starts to lose control. I slightly let off the brakes, luckily, I just out of instinct. And I kind of just sidestep the vehicle. And I'm going so fast that the truck passes the car sideways that basically just pulled out in front of me and slides sideways into these barriers that stop you from falling into this 100-foot gully. The truck hammers the side of the barriers, jumps up onto it, and does if you were ever into skateboarding, or anybody who's ever been into skateboarding as a kid, it did like a rail slide off the top of these concrete barriers for a solid probably 40 feet, and virtually sawed the frame of the truck in half. And because the truck got sawed in half and snapped, it went over like this and kind of came to a stop. And one, probably saved my life, but two, also in that whole process, blew a hole or did something in the side of the fuel tank. And I'm just frozen. My hand, I'm sweating, my heart's pounding, I'm scared out of my mind. Everybody who was driving or pedestrians walking have all now stopped and are staring directly at me in the truck. I look up the road and the police officer comes screeching to a halt with all his lights and sirens on, runs up to the truck, yanks the door open, tries to grab me and yank me out of the truck. I have my seatbelt on and I'm still holding the steering wheel. I'm just frozen. And I guess because he felt like I was trying to stay in the truck or hold on to the truck, he actually physically punches me in the face. The police officer punches me in the face. I freak out, I let go. And he somehow finagles me out of the seatbelt and rips me out of the car. One of my shoes fell off because it hit the waist part so a shoe flies off. And he virtually drags me to the back of the police car and throws me in. I end up going to jail. They shut down the entire dip because it was one way from one top to the other side. It was a main road. They shut it all off because of all the fuel that could have combusted, flames, all that sort of stuff. Truck was just a total disaster. And I go to jail and I end up in court. I spend the weekend in jail. I think my parents came down. They said they could bail me out. My parents were like, he can stay in jail. He can go to the court thing on the Monday. And I go to court from the police station on the Monday and stand in front of a judge. And I got reckless driving. I lost my license for 2 years. It was a real disaster. But I feel like I learned a lot from that. And, unfortunately, that wasn't the last time that I crashed a vehicle. I crashed actually several after that. But that was my very first vehicle. Didn't last very long. I had a thing against neon lights ever since that day. And 2 years later, I went back and got my full license. And I never ran from the police again for a while anyhow. But I did crash a few more cars.
At Dollar Shave Club, you're always in control. Simply choose the delivery dates and frequency that suits your schedule so you don't run out. Get a shave, shower, or oral care starter set for just $5 at dollarshaveclub.com.